Welcome to Reverb Roundtable, a weekly show that brings the brightest creative minds and digital producers in sports, entertainment, politics, news, and more to share their stories and strategies that will help you become a better leader and creator. This podcast is hosted by Clark Campbell, the founder and CEO of Reverb Agency, an event media production company where the goal is always to make great events look great online. What truly sells a product? Is it facts and reasons? Is it flashy lights and celebrity faces? Or is it something even more fundamental? On today's episode, we are joined by Dr. J.J. Peterson, the Chief of Teaching and Facilitation at StoryBrand, a company that teaches businesses how to clarify their messaging to connect with their clients and sell their services more effectively. We discuss the important role narratives play in marketing, what we can learn from Pixar, and how something JJ said in 2018 literally changed the course of Reverb. Now, on to this week's episode. Here's your host, Clark Campbell.
Thank you, Tessa. You heard all you needed to know about Dr. J.J. Peterson, but I want to hear from him. J.J. Peterson, Dr. J.J. Peterson. I'm here with Will. What is up? How's Nash Vegas?
It is today. We just made it through another tornado warning, so I'm happy. Yeah, a year ago from this date is when the tornado hit Nashville, and we missed another one last night. So I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed today.
So you had a blizzard, and then you had a tornado. So
yeah,
sheesh. Oh man, it's so good. J.J. Peterson is our friend. It's so weird to call him doctor, but it's the right thing to do. So if you ever meet him, bow down to him and say Dr. Reverend.
Yeah,
Dr. Reverend J.J. Peterson is the full title that we go with.
I make you guys say it, even though we're friends. So,
absolutely.
I appreciate it.
I was really scared of Dr. J.J. Peterson when I first met him. Like, I didn't know how to take him. Like, I was like, but the more I got to know him, I was like, he really likes me. And it worked.
I do.
You know, the entire reason he got his doctorate was so that everyone at StoryBrand had to call him doctor. That was the whole reasoning behind it.
So wait a second. We're saying this and we're saying doctorate. Okay, Dr. J.J. Peterson, you work for StoryBrand.
I do.
In what do you have a doctorate in? Serious question. I know it's in messaging or communications or something, but what is it in?
The actual PhD is in communication, and then my study was in the area of narrative marketing.
And that fits perfectly with StoryBrand, right?
Oddly enough, yes. Yeah.
Did you actually, first of all, tell everybody, elevator pitch, you teach other people how to do it. What is StoryBrand for those who don't know?
A lot of companies have a really hard time with their messaging and have confusing messaging, unclear messaging. Mm-hmm. And so we come in with a 7-part story framework and teach companies how to create compelling stories that invite customers to engage on a deeper level so people can grow their businesses.
And so that's amazing. And for those people who are listening, Will, you can attest to this. StoryBrand has transformed our company not only from a cultural standpoint internally, but also from a revenue standpoint. We are able to do so much more work so quickly. Would you say StoryBrand has affected us to the good?
When he said it real quick, right? It's a 7-part framework to help people make money. Yeah. And the framework part comes into where ultimately we always have a framework that we fall back on for every project that we do. We help people oftentimes create real-time media ad events, great video work, photographic, and it's something that we always fall back on. But the key point at the end of it that he talks about is that it helps make people make money, which is how we're able to actually get people to come back to us and keep hiring us to do all these things.
We are not a nonprofit, and neither are you. And
exactly right.
That we do. You should be making money with your business that you have.
And you have a lot of people who are kind of afraid of making money, to be honest with you. But back to your PhD, like why did you tie it to what you were doing with StoryBrand? Was it just like, I want to get a PhD because I'm cool? Or you've done a lot in education. You've worked for colleges and universities, but why a PhD?
Well, that was originally my PhD was because I was dean of students at a university and I was a professor. And so it was just part of the game. You know, like if I really wanted to actually continue in higher education, then I needed a PhD if I wanted to teach more. So that's where it started. I've always been kind of fascinated with story and communication in general. And so that even before I came to work for StoryBrand, that's what I was studying. I taught public speaking. I taught argument. I taught leadership. I studied C.S. Lewis and Tolkien in Oxford. I went to Sundance and worked with filmmakers and learned, story at Sundance. And I mean, just kind of, it's always been a part of everything that I've done for the past 20 years. And so when I came to StoryBrand, I actually kind of put my PhD on pause for a while. And I was kind of not sure where I wanted to go with it, with the study, because originally I was studying comedy and humor and kind of how to use comedy and humor in communication. And then for a while I studied mystery and how mystery and indirect communication influences our thinking. So studied a lot of Kierkegaard and C.S. Lewis. And so I was kind of in those spaces, but for a while I didn't really see how it applied to where I was at. And so I just kind of was like, I'm done with this PhD. This is way too hard to work. I don't need it anymore.
Giving up, throw in the towel.
And so for literally a few years, I just kept paying like the couple $100s that they require to keep it open until I was like, well, or not. And then finally, really what happened is we started surveying our customers, StoryBrand customers. And we found that people who went through a narrative marketing transformation. So moved from kind of like fact-based marketing to narrative-based marketing or messaging, if you're not even in the marketing world, but you learn how to tell a clear story, a clear narrative in your messaging, then they saw exponential growth. Like they saved money on their messaging.
Okay, hold on.
And then...
Can you repeat that? Those who went from fact-based marketing to narrative-based marketing, is that what you said?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, saw exponential growth. And so we wanted to know what caused that? Like, is it just nonprofits that could do that? Or was it business to business companies? Or was it business to customer? Or was it large companies or small companies? What were the factors that influenced the exponential growth? And what we discovered is that there weren't any mitigating factors. There was no variable, essentially, that made somebody do better at narrative marketing than not. Nonprofit, for-profit, all those things, even if you were male, female, we looked at that. Are males or females better at storytelling and marketing? And we looked at all of it, and nothing made a difference, had an influence on the success, except for implementation, if people actually did it. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of wanted to prove that and kind of walk through it. So I changed my dissertation to really dive into narrative marketing a little bit deeper, study why was there anything else out there like this that has showed people how to create clear marketing messages in a narrative format? And it turns out there was not. And then nobody had studied kind of the influence of that. And so I studied that and then went a little bit deeper on the variables to see like what actually made a difference. And literally the only difference was implementation. And so then out of that, Donald Miller and I wrote a book called Marketing Made Simple that took the StoryBrand framework and said, here's how to do a step-by-step process of creating a marketing sales funnel. Because, we're very much, you guys know, like we obsess about our customer success and just like work our butts off to help them succeed. And if the one thing that was holding them back was not understanding story, but the implementation of that story, then we're going to fix that. So we wrote a book called Marketing Made Simple. And that was all based on my dissertation and the research that I did there.
Which leads me to a couple of questions here, and let me see if I can navigate them. Number one, Marketing Made Simple, difference between that book and StoryBrand, because some people, StoryBrand's been like a bestseller for years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And tell everybody what the difference is between Marketing Made Simple and building a StoryBrand.
So building a StoryBrand really breaks down story and story formula. It shows you how to create a clear marketing message. So how to create a clear message using story. And then Marketing Made Simple shows you how to take that story and put it on your website, your one-liner.
Implementation. Yeah. Gotcha.
It's all about the implementation.
So the second question to that is, who does it work for? Who does this, I know you said your research found that it worked in all scenarios, but nonprofits, news, journalism, B2B, B2C. Like, who does it work for?
Yep. All of them. I mean, literally.
He said yes to all the above, actually.
I will say there is one group that for me is actually a little bit more difficult because it's quite a bit more nuanced, and that is musicians. And that's literally it. That's literally it. And I found a way to kind of work with musicians with a story framework that isn't quite formulaic. It's a little bit more nuanced, but that literally I can tell you, I've worked with huge companies, small companies, chiropractors, beauty products, photographers, car makers, the White House. We've worked with on political campaigns, at higher education, events. We've worked with.
We know something about events, but
one or two little things. And so we work with all types of companies. I'm not sure there's a type of company we haven't worked with, and it works for everybody.
Fascinating. So I want to jump into so many other things here, JJ, and I'm going to put you on the spot really quick about journalism. So we're about to help a local news organization teach their reporters to be better storytellers using some of the things we've learned from StoryBrand. We're just going to do like a 30, 40 minute, probably the keynote, the StoryBrand keynote.
Yeah.
Can you give me some free coaching real quick? How do I talk to journalists? How can journalists benefit? Because we interviewed a CNN White House producer recently. Yeah. How can journalists use the StoryBrand framework? And I know we're going to get to the framework in just a minute, but how can a journalist use it?
I think there's a couple different areas. I mean, we can walk through the formula in just a minute because there really are 7 parts to any good story. So I think when journalists understand those 7 elements, they're going to get better. But the other piece of really the framework that will help journalists, and good journalists already know this, is that the story has to be about one thing. That you can't make the story about 50 things. It has to be focused and clear. So the story has to be about one thing. And that is, you typically what we in the StoryBrand framework, we would say, what does the customer or character want? Or what is the controlling idea? So the story has to be about one single individual thing. And then, so clarity and focus is going to be important. And then understanding how conflict works in a story and overcoming problems creates interest and intrigue. So if you're, and again, journalists know this, but if you're writing a story about somebody who's sitting on their couch all day, that's not going to be interesting. But if you're writing a story about somebody who's sitting on a couch and a plane crashes in the front yard, now we have a problem and the story is interesting. But I would say truthfully for any writer in general, the biggest piece to understand in all of this is the clarity and focus, is that the story can't be about 20 different things. It has to be about one thing or you will lose the audience.
All right, JJ. So we know that it has to be about one thing and that it works from everything from writers to musicians, B2B, B2C. We're gonna put a clock up on the screen for if you're watching on video. It's gonna be 90 seconds. I need you to. There's a whole book written on this, but you have a PhD in it, so we have tons of faith in you. Condense the book. Give me the framework in 90 seconds. Starting.
No. Well, 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
No. We're gonna do 90 seconds. Listen, I'm pushing it.
Good.
Okay.
Gracious.
90 seconds.
And then you can ask me questions.
And then we'll ask you questions follow up. But you got 90 seconds to lay out the 7-part framework. Ready, go.
So all stories really are essentially the same. They are formulaic. And this formula has been tested and tried over centuries, even going all the way back to Aristotle and Plato. And when you can tell a good story, what you're really doing is helping people make sense of information. So when we say, give me context, so I give you facts, and then you say, well, give me context. What you're doing then is giving story. So you're helping make sense of the facts that you're about to tell. And the way to do that is through a very specific formula. Now, if we were writing a screenplay, there would be 32 or 36 things we'd have to cover. But for the purposes of most basic stories, and specifically for marketing, it comes down to 7 elements. And those 7 elements are that you have to meet a character, and you have to know what that character wants at the very beginning of the story. And it can only be about one thing. Then that character encounters a problem that they have to overcome. And that's when the story gets good. The character has to overcome a problem. And then in order to overcome that problem, they can't do it on their own. So that character must meet a guide, somebody who has been there before them to help them overcome that. Then the guide gives them a plan, a very simple plan to win the day. Then there's a moment where they are called to action. They have to act, accept, or reject the challenge to move forward. And we know that it ends in success or failure.
Oh, he just did it.
Boom.
He just did it.
He landed it. I told you could do it in under 90 seconds. I told you. All right. So now we have some follow-up time. Now we have some follow-up questions. So you laid that out beautifully. Let's say I'm using the 7-part framework. Am I the character in the situation? If I'm a business, am I the character?
No, you are not. Thank you for asking that question. That's principles, but
softball.
Then when it comes to application, so many companies are telling the wrong story. They try to make themselves the hero in the story. So no matter who your audience is, whether you're getting up to give a speech or whether you're writing an email or whether you're creating marketing collateral or anything, you're trying to promote any event at all you're doing is you have to position your customer or your audience as the hero of the story. And you are the guide. Because what happens is a lot of companies try to make themselves the hero of the story. And when you do that, what you're actually doing is placing yourself in competition with your audience or your customer. Because your customer is living a story, and you are living a story, and therefore you are in opposite stories. But in order to engage your customer, you have to position yourself in their story. So you are the guide to your customer's hero. So your customer is the hero of the story. You have to identify what it is that they want, and it has to be what I said earlier, one thing. Even though you may think your customer want 20 different things, in order to have a clear message and get people to engage with you and not confuse them, the story has to be about one thing, what they want. Then you have to articulate what the problem is that they're experiencing that's getting in the way of that. So let's just say this. Let's say I'm selling mattresses and I say, for my customer, I say, we know that you want a good night's sleep. The problem is your mattress is actually old and causing you a lot of pain. So you're just literally articulating what it is they want and then articulating the problem that's getting in the way. Then you position yourself as the guide with empathy and authority. So you understand your customer's problem and you've helped other people overcome it. So you would say, we're frustrated by a lack of sleep too, which is why we created a mattress that has now been sold to 10,000 customers and helps them get a great night's sleep. Empathy and authority. We understand your problem and we've overcome the problem. Then you give them a plan. So you say, here's how you pick out your mattress. You come to the store, you figure out your sleep number, and then you get a great night's sleep. 1, 2, 3. Then you call them to action. So you say, find a store near you. That's the call to action. And then you cast a vision for what life looks like if they don't buy your mattress. That's failure. Or success if they do buy your mattress. So failure would be that you're going to continue to have a poor night's sleep, and success is you're going to wake up every morning refreshed and ready to take on the day. So if I put the whole 7 elements together and wrote that, say, in an email or a quick 30-second ad, I might say something like, we know that getting a good night's sleep is hard and you're looking to get a great night's sleep. Well, so many people are sleeping on mattresses that are old and are causing them pain. We understand this. I used to actually sleep on a hard mattress that made me sick every morning I got up because I was so exhausted, which is why I helped create a mattress that has actually changed the way people sleep and helped 10,000 customers. Here's all you need to do in order to find the mattress that works for you is come into one of our stores. We're going to give you the sleep number that shows you what mattress is perfect for you. Then we'll help you buy the mattress and so you can get a great night's sleep. So to get started, all you need to do is find a store near you, and you're going to stop worrying about having sleepless nights and waking up feeling nauseous in the morning. And instead, you're going to wake up refreshed and ready for the day.
He just did that without taking one breath.
One breath or one note. That all happened up in his head, which was amazing.
I'm not on a clock. Was I on a clock there? Did I do it at night?
No.
We'll put up a clock now just to show how fast you did it.
That was so good and so helpful. I'm going to steal that in the future. I'm fascinated with this. Isn't the way y'all have packaged the framework is not necessarily a new. You've condensed it, but it came from, I think, filmmaking, and you said all the way back to Socrates, and for centuries and centuries and centuries. Like, how did y'all boil it down to these 7 things? Was it something Don Miller it popped into his head, or like, how did you get it to 7?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it was Donald Miller. And I mean, he's the one who created this. And he really came to it through looking at a lot of story formulas. So, there is, for him, he really came through it through screenwriting. There's a couple books in particular. One is called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. And what he really points out is the formulaic nature of screenwriting. And when I lived in LA, I mean, literally every year, practically in the LA Times, there would be a story about how Blake Snyder had ruined filmmaking because he pointed out how formulaic storytelling is and then taught people how to do it. So in his, literally, he says, shows you what needs to be on every page in a screenplay. And in a screenplay, 1 page equals about 1 minute of film. So when you know what's supposed to be on page 7, you know what actually is going to be in minute 7 in the movie. Wow. So he literally shows you how to do that page by page, which then translates into people doing that exact same thing. And that's the reason why every movie feels the same. Why everything feels the same way. And it's because he points out how he teaches people how to use the formula of storytelling in order to write a screenplay. Now, what I will say is the way he does it and the way that we do it is designed to reach the masses. It's easy access. So there are art films that break the rules, but those art films don't make money. So you can make a great piece of art.
No one knows about them.
And I love art films. I absolutely love art films. But if you want them to make a lot of money, you need to make it accessible and easy to understand. People don't want to have to think. They want to go into movies in particular for an escape. Well, it's in many ways, it's the same way with your marketing and messaging. When you make things confusing and make people have to think, they don't have time to think. They're looking for an escape when they're buying something, or they're looking for a solution to a problem. And you need to make that so clear that it's very accessible. And so when you follow the simple formula, it makes things accessible and it allows people to engage with your product or service more easily or buy into whatever you're trying to sell.
Gosh, this is going to be such a good episode when people hear this. It's so good. JJ, whenever I talk about StoryBrand with friends or clients, I almost always reference a Disney movie because every Disney movie, every Pixar movie, I can go through any of them and they all follow the framework, and not StoryBrand's framework per se, but this framework. So what's your favorite Disney or Pixar movie and how does it follow the framework? Ready, set, go.
Am I back on the clock? Oh man. You caught me here. Whenever anybody asks me what's my favorite movie, that's a very hard question for me to answer. Right now, I would say The Incredibles. I've been watching The Incredibles a little bit more in depth, right? So, you identify, essentially, it's a group protagonist with the family, but really the dad is the hero, right? Yeah. So the dad, he wants to make a difference in the world. He wants to have meaning. He wants to feel important, feel valued, all of those things. The problem is ultimately, in this case, his own kind of ego gets in the way and he goes out and meets the villain who, who tries to kill him. He's trying to develop this machine that's going to kill all superheroes so he can be the superhero. So the dad has to overcome that problem in the movie, and his family's in danger. And he meets, his guide is that little short lady who makes the costume. And
Edna Mode.
Yes, Edna. And she's the guide because she not only reminds him, but reminds the whole family of who they are and who they were meant to be. Right. So she not only gives them the tools to win the day with the suits, but she is reminding the hero who they are and who they can become. And so then they develop a plan, ultimately to overcome and beat the villain. And there's a moment where the the big bad guy's machine lands in New York and the family has to decide, are they going to step in or run away? That's the call to action. And then we know that the whole city can be destroyed, failure, and the family dies, or that success is the bad guy loses and the family can be all together.
Crazy.
Every Disney and Pixar movie, every movie fits into that. One of the things that I've seen lately that's been interesting too is not only does Disney, of course, like everyone else, use this same framework over and over again for all their films, but earlier on, they used a lot of the same frames of animation that they did for individual movies. They would take it and repeat it. So like you can see like dances and coordinated moves happening the exact same way in like the Robin Hood movie with the animals and with what's the movie with the boy and the bear? I'm forgetting what that one is. The Boy and the Bear, Jungle Book. So Jungle Book and like the Robin Hood movie, like there's
you're not old enough to know Jungle Book,
right?
Will.
Hey, no, I grew up on Jungle Book, VHS baby. But like they not only they're using the same frames of animation and whatnot too, because it's something that worked for them as an organization that made money, and so they'd copy it and they'd paste it and they'd take it from movie to movie.
Jeez, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
and we can apply it to our brands. Go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say it's what really it all comes down to in marketing and branding, but also even in like making a movie is, I said it earlier, is that story is a sense making device. So let's just take like The Incredibles, for instance, right? The information that we learn about in the story is the story that matters to communicate a specific message or a specific lesson, right? That promotes a specific response from the audience. We're wanting to get a response, a thought change, and action out of the audience, right? So the details that we put into the story should lead us to that lesson and that we learn. And so, let's say with Incredibles, we don't know what the dad was like as a child. Right? That information gets left out because if we added that information, then that might actually tell a different story. And so as the audience, we're going, wait, am I supposed to learn this or am I supposed to learn this? And then, all of a sudden we start going into his dating background of who he dated before he met his wife, which doesn't actually contribute to the message we're trying to communicate. And all of a sudden now, wait, am I supposed to be, what lesson am I supposed to be learning here? And so that's why the rules of the rules of story are so important, and why that formula is so important, because it helps us stay focused in telling the right story. We can tell 5 million different stories about our brand. We can write 50 million movies about love. But if we want the audience to know one thing when they walk out of here, or we want our customer to know one thing, which is ultimately buy this product or service, then we need to use the formula to keep things tight. The more tight you are, the more sense the story makes, and the more likely people are to engage and act based on that story.
So it's just as important what you include as it is what you leave out. Like both are equally as important, because there's so much to include, right? In every story that you're telling, everything you want to communicate, there's so much you can do, and it's just as important to leave what might feel like important things out for the sake of clarity and ease in that communication.
I would say it's more important. I would say what you leave out, what you know to leave out, is more important than almost what you put in. Great writers know what to leave out. That's just what it comes down to. And so when you can figure out how to be focused and clear with your message, you're going to see greater results.
Oh, there's two directions I want to take this. Speaking of leaving things out, we're gonna wrap this with two things. One is narrative transportation, and one is a little personal story about how much you helped us become who we are today. But narrative transportation, how does that relate to StoryBrand framework? What is narrative transportation? It's something you've talked about a lot, and I'm always fascinated, as I am today, to hear you talk about it. Maybe not tie it to the election, but how does narrative, you can if you want, but how does narrative transportation relate to story?
So narrative transportation is a communication concept. So it's like studied in communication theory. And the idea is that when you transport yourself into a story, that is called narrative transportation. So if you've ever heard the phrase like got lost in a book, or when you're watching a movie and something scary happens and you jumped, you have experienced narrative transportation. You put yourself in the story. You feel what the characters are feeling. And, this can go super high, or it cannot. Just because you hear a story doesn't mean you do experience narrative transportation. But the better the story, the more narrative transportation you experience. For me, I literally found myself one day praying for the characters on Walking Dead. And God, please protect them as they're. And I went, oh, no, you that side. This is not real. And that's how much I had placed myself in the story as I started praying for my friends who were stuck in the prison. While the zombies were outside. And so, that's narrative transportation. Now, the research shows that the way that there's all these rules of what you have to follow to help people experience transportation. And two that really fall into kind of how StoryBrand works are these two things called fidelity and coherency. If a story sticks together and it makes sense, then people will experience a higher level of narrative transportation. If you break fidelity and coherency, then people experience less narrative transportation. So in the StoryBrand framework, what that really means is that the 7 elements really build on each other and work together to keep a cohesive story and help the story make sense, stay focused. And in a very broad term, let's use a generic example of this. If you are watching a movie and you see a character in an airport, and in the movie they're supposed to be in LA, but that airport is in Chicago.
Right.
And you look at it and all of a sudden you're like, they're not in LA, they're in Chicago.
It breaks it.
It breaks it. You take yourself out of the story. You start, you don't have narrative transportation. You come out. Well, they have broken fidelity, right? It doesn't stick together and make sense. They broke fidelity and coherency in that moment. So we stop thinking about the story and we start thinking about the details of the story, right? Well, it's the same if you tell the story in the wrong way or you tell the story about too many things, people don't know what to pay attention to, then fidelity and coherency are broken. So you have to follow the rules of story in order to achieve high fidelity and coherency. Now, the next level of research shows that the greater level of narrative transportation that people experience, the more likely their minds and their actions are to be changed. So the more that you can place yourself in the story or see yourself in the story, the more likely you are going to be influenced. Your mind will be changed and your actions will be changed. And there's a bunch of research on this. And this goes all the way from studying movies and books all the way to studying tweets and Instagram posts. It's true for those as well. So if you can actually invite people into a story where they can see themselves in the story, identify with the problem that you're talking about in the story, or identify with the life that you offer on the other side in the story, in a tweet or in an Instagram post, people can experience narrative transportation in that and are more likely to engage with their product or service. So all that is to say, when you follow the rules of story, you create a story that sticks together and makes sense. Therefore, people see themselves in the story, and they are more likely to have their minds and their actions changed. And in the business world, what that means literally is you have more influence over people's ability to engage with your product and service and ultimately buy.
JJ, I know what narrative transportation looks like in a movie theater while watching The Incredibles, and I know what it looks like when reading Lord of the Rings. What does narrative transportation look like when you're browsing a website? What does it look like when you're reading a tweet? How is that different from narrative transportation, how we experience it in films and books?
It's not quite as intense. Obviously, there might be a little bit less emotional connection.
You haven't seen my Twitter feed then because it's intense.
It's true. It's true. There's a lot of narrative transportation happening during the polls and Twitter.
It makes me weep all the time. Movie, you have 2.5 hours. In a tweet, you have 30 characters. So you have less ability. But what it comes down to is when you understand, say, the elements of story, the StoryBrand framework, and you identify what it is your customer wants, what problem they're experiencing, how you position yourself as a guide, the plan and call to action, success and failure. All you're doing then, once you understand that macro story for your audience or for your customer, All you have to do then is take one piece of that to put it in a tweet to help people connect with you. So you can cast a vision with success of what life can look like when people get a good night's sleep. Just using the words like, imagine waking up every morning and being excited about taking on the day. Well, that's what our mattress can do. Well, if I'm a person who's looking for a mattress, I can literally imagine myself waking up every morning when I'm now not. Or you can ask the question, are you tired of waking up every morning nauseous because you didn't get a good night's sleep? Well, that starts to, just asking that question invites me into a story, because that's the story I'm living. Now, if I am not their customer, by telling a clear story, they have excluded people who are not having a good night's sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those type of people, they're not going to be inviting in people who love their mattress and who are getting a good night's sleep. But you don't want those people. They're not going to.
They're not a part of your demographic anyways.
You're just identifying with people who you can solve their problem, and so you're trying to invite them into a story. And when they see that and begin to see themselves and go, yeah, I can imagine myself actually waking up rested. Oh, I am sick of waking up every morning nauseous because I'm tired. That little bit allows them to enter into that story, and then they can hear more about the story and see if the story is fitting for them.
Which, Will, do you know why people buy products? They buy products
because they read words that tell them to.
Yeah, that solve
their
problems.
Yep, that's it.
I'm telling you, that's literally the only reason. When I tell people that, they're like, "Nah, I think I buy my rake for my yard because your yard is messy and it's a problem." They're like, I don't buy. And then you basically logically walk it out for any time you go to the store, anytime you eat, even on social media. Why do you scroll mindlessly through social media? Because you're tired and you need escapism. You need laughter. And so you scroll and you consume content because you're feeling exhausted.
Yeah. Yep. Ultimately, you're always trying to escape from something else, whether it's escape from a messy yard or escape from distraction. Exactly. You're looking towards something to take you out of that, which, as you're saying, is what narrative transportation does quickly and effectively. Instead of just shoving a number at someone and saying, hey, call this number and buy now, you're actually giving them a reason to want to do that.
Telling you. Go.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I know,
for me or JJ?
For you.
Oh,
so
gosh.
I know that something JJ and the StoryBrand crew said early on really affected us as a company.
Yeah,
I know you have a story around that.
Sure,
and I'm not talking about the story of you dreaming about marrying JJ and being the wedding.
But
there's another one. No.
Performing JJ's wedding in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not actually asking about that one. I'm asking you about the other one that's more like defining of our company.
True story, audience. True story.
It is a true story. We'll put it in the show notes maybe or something.
That'll be a post credits.
It will be post credits. Yeah, we'll record that later. But no, in all seriousness, I was in late 2018, November 2018. It was a bright blue sunny day. I was pulling into the car wash, and speaking of narrative transportation, right? Did I take you there, JJ? No? Okay. Gotcha.
It's like he was reading Lord of the Rings, man.
I'm pulling into a car wash, and JJ and Don are on some podcast, and all I can remember is JJ saying, you have to be known for something, for solving something. You're talking about companies. You got to be known for solving something. One thing. You don't need to be known out in the marketplace for solving 20 problems. You need to be known as solving a problem. I literally picked up my phone and called someone in our company. I said, listen, it's time. We have to refocus our energies towards event media, event marketing, because we do all kinds of media and marketing services, but people are confused with the name Social Lion, which was our former company name. They're confused. They're like, well, do you do social media? Do you do event? Do you do photography? Do you do graphic design? Yes, we do all those, but it's really, really confusing. And so I said to him, we've got to change our name. It's causing so much confusion, and we need to talk about doing one thing. So we rebranded we found this, actually Will found this domain, RVRB, reverb. We were looking for a word that went with music because if you think of all the reverberations of a piano, when you organize the reverberations of a piano and all the sounds of a piano, it's beautiful. Well, all the noise on the internet is overwhelming, just like a kid banging on a piano. But when you organize those sounds on the internet, like what we try to do at events, it clarifies things and people just lean back and they're transported.
Yeah.
There you go. And so you, JJ, Dr. JJ Peterson, are really the catalyst, what you said on that podcast. So hopefully today someone will they'll have another moment.
Yeah, where they're just transported. I will say though, two months fast forward and we're actually working our first StoryBrand event.
We get to StoryBrand in Nashville.
And Don's like, you guys are Social Line, right? And you're like, actually, we're Reverb now. And he's like, yeah, I like Social Line. Why'd you guys change your name? He's like, I like Social Line better.
I was like, I couldn't believe I was meeting Donald Miller. I don't know. It was just one of those things. And I was meeting, and he goes, oh, it's not Social Line? I liked that. And I was like,
I like that. You should
I was like, oh God. Oh God.
We've had an identity crisis ever since, actually.
Oh, well, so there's the end of that story. But we want to thank you, JJ. You've really, really been a huge influence personally on our team and on our company. Right, Will? Is it just me?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, he has a doctorate in this. So I don't know how experienced Don is, but he doesn't have a doctorate in story. So truthfully, I go to JJ when it comes to the real authority on the topic.
Yeah.
JJ, are you on Twitter or Instagram, anywhere the social transporter people can come find you?
Yes, I am.
Private accounts? I don't know.
I never know what my actual what are the handles are. So, I'm looking it up right now. It is
legendary.
I'm not kidding. So it's at Dr. JJ Peterson.
Thank you.
Beautiful. That was so hard. JJ Peterson, he got there. And then of course StoryBrand is StoryBrand, which is what JJ represents.
Learn more about kind of the workshops that we do and teaching. Then go to StoryBrand.com and we actually help people literally in 2 days clarify their whole message and help them get a start on their sales funnel. And
they can do it right now. They can do a workshop online this year. Mm-hmm. They can have a private workshop potentially, and hopefully maybe one day again you'll have in-person events.
We would love to. And we'd love for you guys to be there because we love working.
We would love to. We miss you guys. We do. Check out some of the content we've made with StoryBrand. They have been such a joy through our journey here, and they've helped us significantly increase our revenue, which, as JJ said at the beginning, that's really what we're here to do.
We're not non-for-profits, and neither are you.
We're not non-for-profits. Thank you, Dr. JJ Peterson. We hope to see you on the StoryBrand podcast. No, Business Made Simple podcast.
It has been rebranded.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in Nashville. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Show notes, you'll hear about them here in just a couple seconds. We'll see you next time right here on the Reverb Roundtable.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Reverb Roundtable. We have learned so much from JJ and the whole crew at StoryBrand in the last couple of years, and we knew when we decided to launch this podcast that we had to ask him to come on and impart some of his wisdom to our people. So if you got a lot out of that episode, don't forget that we write up show notes for every single episode so that you never have to worry about missing anything. To grab those show notes, just go ahead and go to rvrb.cc/podcast and subscribe to our email list. One last thing, if you are vibing with the show, if you like what you hear and are learning a lot from the people we're having on, if you wouldn't mind leaving us a review, we would be so thankful to you. We really want to make sure this podcast reaches people so that we can help others become better leaders and creators. We just really believe that this podcast is going to help people. So if you want to leave a review, that would be dope, and we would love you so much. Once again, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss our next episode, and we'll see you next week.